Good evening and welcome. I'm Kelli Richards, CEO of the All Access Group and the host of All Access Radio. As a highly sought-after consultant, super connector, trusted advisor, celebrity wrangler, and thought leader, I connect innovators and influencers from Silicon Valley to Hollywood to Madison Avenue. As a trusted advisor, I transform the quality of people's lives, and I'm also the author of the best-selling ebook, The Magic and Moxie of Apple, An Insider's View. Tonight's guest on the show is Zeeshan Zaidi. Zeeshan is the SVP and GM for the On Tour with Ticketmaster Group, a division of Live Nation Entertainment, where he works with artists, managers, agents, promoters, and labels to help make tours more successful through leveraging Ticketmaster's marketing reach, data insights, and commerce opportunities. He's also the lead vocalist, songwriter, guitarist, and founder of alternative rock band The Commuters. Prior to joining Ticketmaster, Zeeshan spent several years in the startup world in various capacities. He was CEO and co-founder of Host Committee, a social media and events startup. He's also served as COO and head of global for LimeWire, the world's largest file-sharing network. And previously, Zeeshan developed the careers of superstar artists such as Avril Lavigne, Outkast, Usher, and Dido in his numerous roles in the label side of the music industry at Sony BMG, including in his roles as VP of Digital for RCA and Senior Director of Marketing for Arista. Welcome to the show, Zeeshan.
Hey.
Zeeshan, it's great to have you.
Hi, Kelli. It's great to be here.
I don't know if you heard my intro. We're having a little bit of a delay issue, but I just did the intro a few seconds ago on you. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we got everything in order for you, and we can dive right in.
Awesome. So excited.
Me too. And I really appreciate you making the time for this. So
Absolutely.
Just to get started, Zeeshan, having a trusted advisor is so important, as I'm sure you'll agree, in your career. And you've had, of course, many facets to your career. I wonder who some of your most notable mentors have been along the way, and, of course, whether you've mentored others.
So that's a great point, Kelli. I've heard that, a lot over the course of my career, right, which is it's important to have mentors and trusted advisors. I've been fortunate enough to have many. I have a group of people who, and for me, it's sort of when I ask myself who are they for me, it's sort of every time I'm making a career move or a career transition, there's a group of people I go back to talk to. Some of them are people who I used to work for, right? So when I think of mentors, I think, for example, there's a gentleman by the name of Charles Goldstock. He used to be president of BMG. I worked for him for a few years. There's a gentleman by the name of Larry Mistel, who was the general manager of Arista Records. These are a couple of my earliest bosses, right? So for sure, I always go back to them, and they helped guide me early in my career, and they continue to do so. But for me, there's also a group of people who I didn't necessarily, they weren't my former bosses, for example, but they're, close friends from high school, college, business school, who may not be sort of typical mentors. When you think of a mentor, you think of someone senior in the industry that you're a part of. These are just people who know me well, have known me, have seen me from the beginning, have seen me evolve. Yeah, and have an important perspective. And I find myself going back to them just as much, right? There's a study group from business school, right? The 4 or 5 guys, we work together every day. They know me and know things about me and can sort of point things out when I'm in key sort of decision-making moments that, frankly, no one else can. So yeah, there's definitely a group of people, whether, again, former employers or close friends that I go to, and that's just huge, especially at key junctions. And as far as mentoring others go, absolutely. I hope that I'm doing a good job. When I've hired a lot of people early in their careers, I like to try to help them develop when they're working with me and continue to stay in touch afterwards. Yeah. Just know that there's a place that it can come back to for advice and for guidance, and a lot of them do.
Yeah, and I think that just doing that, paying it forward, it speaks volumes. For anybody who does it, you know the reward is built into the process there.
Yeah, and especially, and you know this yourself, Kelly, being in the entertainment industry for as long as you have.
Yeah.
You know, part of it is it's just, look, it's good karma to be a coach or a mentor and to just help people along. But the other thing is, you know, in music I've seen and in other industries, like, you never know where, you know, if you work in a company, like, everyone's on their way up, and assistant roles are stepping stones to the next step. Like, anyone around you can end up being a very important, senior, influential person in the industry. So
yeah, you know, that is so important. I'm glad you said that, because honestly, that's the cornerstone of my whole success across 3 decades in my career, and I'm sure you'll agree with that. You know, the key is to build long-term trusted relationships that stay with you, the person, regardless of how your career trajectory goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's everything. It's just everything. And then, you know, the best part is if you're not in touch with them for a while and you reconnect and you just pick up where you left off, that's how you know you've got those tribe members in place.
Yeah.
And I'll just throw a name out that you and I both know in common, I think, and that's Vito. Yeah, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's somebody I had not been in touch with for maybe 2 years, just had a conversation recently and picked right up where we left off. So
that's totally the way to do it.
That becomes important. Now, diving right in, because you may have missed my intro, but I covered the gamut of everything about you, I think, and you've done so much. So there's so much breadth about you, Zeeshan, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show. You've done more than most people do in a career, and of course there's plenty left, but let's talk about what
hopefully
you enjoy the most about your current role at Ticketmaster. And do you feel that it supports or advances your work as a musician in your own right? Because you're kind of playing two sides of the coin there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not my first time working in the entertainment industry, but it is my first time working on sort of the live music side. There's many things I love about my work at Ticketmaster. So, you know, the company is just incredible, right? So Ticketmaster is owned by Live Nation Entertainment, right, which is an entertainment company that owns the world's largest concert promoter, the world's largest ticketing company, which is Ticketmaster, the largest collection of artist managers, one of the largest entertainment sponsorship divisions. So it's just a great family, and we're surrounded always by people who just love music, love entertainment, love concerts, and it's a phenomenal environment. And then on top of that, Ticketmaster is one of the leading e-commerce companies in the world, right? So
absolutely,
it's a great family to be a part of. My role, my division, which is the On Tour with Ticketmaster Group, you know, we're essentially the music and the concerts division of Ticketmaster.
Yep.
We work with artists, right? And they're mostly musicians, but a lot of comedians as well, and other types of entertainment. We help artists and their partners, right, their managers, their agents, their promoters, identify and engage and transact with their fans, right, by leveraging what Ticketmaster has to offer, right, which is our data, our marketing, our commerce capabilities. So we work with pretty much every concert tour out there. Yes. to help them achieve their goals. And it's what I love most about this role is the ability to partner with artists and their representatives to say, you know, how can we help you win? Because in this day and age, musicians especially are looking more and more to their live entertainment, to their concert touring activity to achieve not only their kind of revenue goals and their financial goals, but also all their other objectives around a tour, right? Whether it's getting more data or connecting with your fans. Yeah.
They do make most of their money in the pie of how they monetize from touring. We know that. But to your point,
absolutely,
that becomes the center of the wheel of a lot of the other activities they're doing, some of which are monetized, some of which may not be, but all in the spirit of serving the fan and having that fan connection.
Absolutely, because like you're saying, kind of like the fan connection, the point of interaction with the fan around a concert in advance is the ticket transaction, right? So
That's
we
right.
have the data, we have the credit card, and so we have a lot to offer, and they love that. So I absolutely, we love it. There's every major tour that goes out we're working with, and that's phenomenal. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Zeeshan.
Sure.
I just want to say I think what you have is something of a dream job, in my opinion. I have had the role that you have in working with various startups, even in my time at Apple.
Sure.
I even had a widget called On Tour a decade ago, if you can believe it.
Oh, wow. Which
awesome. Was all about making sure that people never missed a concert again. It was in the days of widgets a decade ago.
That's so cool. I'm glad you didn't trademark it. Otherwise, I would have been in trouble.
No, I just thought you'd get a kick out of that. So I really get and respect and love the role that you have. It really is the catbird seat, and you're just, that whole direct-to-fan connection is just pivotal. But now let's come to the other side of my question, which was, now wearing your hat as an artist, do you feel that what you're doing with Ticketmaster supports and advances your work as a musician? Because you have the ability to kick the tires in both directions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say this. On tour works with artists of all sizes, right? From the largest arena and stadium tours to like the smallest club tours.
Yeah.
Where the commuters have to work a little harder to get to the bottom end of the size of artists that we work with. But here's what does help, right? One, I am from a perspective, as an artist, it's helpful to see what the biggest and best artists think of and focus on when they tour. That's extremely helpful. If anything, it's actually the other way around, which is being a musician, right, and focusing on building my own fan base, right, and knowing what a musician needs and cares about helps me with my Ticketmaster job, because I can say that I know our clients extremely well, right? I know exactly what they want. I know exactly what artists need. I am always fooling with solutions and products and offerings for the commuters, right, to figure out, okay, what do we want to use? Who's our best ESP? How do we want to connect with fans? What are the widgets we want on our site? All that helps tremendously on the Ticketmaster front. So it's if anything, it's the other way around. And
that makes a lot of sense, actually. But what a powerful position for you to be in, wearing your one hat as an artist by night, and by day you're able to influence not only what happens to you and your own band, but so much artists out there, every artist out there, really.
Yeah.
So
it's great.
Power position. It's a power position. You get to be in the best of both worlds, near as I can tell.
Yeah, I'm very lucky.
Now, I have heard rumors that the commuters are planning to go on tour soon, and I wonder if that's accurate. Of course, we know you got featured in People magazine last week. That was exciting.
Yeah, we are going to do shows for sure. So we're going to put out a new EP in May. It'll be a 4-song EP, and we'll definitely do shows in the New York area because we always do that, and we're looking at sort of some shows up and down the East Coast. And we haven't figured out beyond that what we're going to do. I think it just depends on how the EP's doing, if it starts getting traction, if we start, I definitely want to focus my touring on the East Coast right now. So, because, we've got a strong base in New York, some in Philly, some in DC, some in Boston. So that corridor is what I want to focus on for now. And then if something starts popping elsewhere, then we'll definitely, keep an eye out for where else we can go.
Yeah, and again, of course, you do have a pretty important day job, so you've got to manage that.
Exactly. Makes it hard to take a month off, and hop into a van. But yeah, and I think for any artist, right, it's good to be smart about your touring in this day and age. It's sort of, and And like you're saying, right, when it's hard for you to take 6 months off and get into a van and go everywhere, you got to be very surgical about, okay, what are the markets to target? Like on a 3-4 day weekend, can I go, play 4 cities nearby?
Exactly.
And focus on building my fan base there, and maybe getting on some radio stations in that local zone. So it's all about, you aspire global, but you're building locally.
Yeah, understood. Now, again, staying with the commuters for one more point I wanted to ask
Sure.
about. On Valentine's Day, just last week, you guys released a song called "You'll Stay Right Here," which I understand was produced in partnership with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and I wonder if you could tell us a bit about that project and that partnership.
Sure. Yeah, so the song's really, really special. I mean, the song is about, I wrote it when I found out that someone very near and dear to me was diagnosed with lymphoma. And and it was, just a painful revelation. And, the song's about, it's a message of hope and strength for the person, and it's also about, just voicing what it's like to watch someone that you care about have to go through something like that, right? And I wanted to, because it was about, this disease, I wanted the video to do something for the cause, right? So met up with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society people in New York. They're really excited about doing something together. I came up with a concept of a video, and the video is about I wanted to tell the story of what a cancer diagnosis can do to people, right? And that it can happen to everyone, but also that it can be overcome, which is kind of the point of the song. But I didn't want to use people because I just felt like that would be too melodramatic. So I was like, I got to do this with 2 puppies. So wrote the concept out, wrote the storyboard, all the dialogue and everything, and found a director, and we shot it in a day and edited it, and the LLS people, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society people, just absolutely loved it, and so it's a video that's doing, that's getting a great reaction. There's a message about the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society at the end. All the proceeds, right, from sales of the single are going to Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and what's amazing is, cancer touches so many people, right? Even if it's not directly, I think every one of your listeners, myself, all my friends, knows someone that they're very close to who's had cancer, right?
My cat is like my child. And he has a recurrence that we just got diagnosed last week of osteosarcoma on his spine. So, yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it is terrible. And so everybody has it no matter what is going on with them.
Everyone's affected by it. And what's so much is sort of, the stories that I'm getting back. Like I sent it to everyone in my office, right, on World Cancer Day, which was a couple of weeks ago. And I said, guys, just so you know, this is what I did, it's awareness. And then someone replied to me, so I didn't know this, right? You just don't know everyone's stories. There's this woman who works with me who said, thank you for doing this. My dad died of lymphoma a few years ago, right? And this means a lot. And then a lot of our fans are writing in saying, well, my grandmother died of leukemia. And it's just sort of, the extent is so, the extent of the impact is so great. And for me, the kind of the most heartening thing is a lot of people are saying thank you for bringing awareness, or you are really capturing what I felt, right? And exactly. So that's the best part of this, right, is when people are connecting to it.
Well, even my radio show producer that just got us set up today, has dealt with that recently in her family. So it's just a terrible situation, and I think it's just so laudable and admirable that you're doing what you're doing to contribute to making a difference. And People Magazine picked up on it last week. So there's
that was great. We've gotten a lot of love from New York and New York area blogs and some sort of more national music blogs, and then people picked up on it. And we're not done yet. We're still working it. So hopefully we'll get some more coverage.
Love it. So kudos to you. It's very important. So switching gears, son, I do want to talk a little bit about Host Committee, which of course is a startup you co-founded. And I've heard it called one of the newest concepts in nightlife in the city that never sleeps, which of course is New York. What problem was it established to address? Could you go into that a little bit?
Sure. So more than anything, I would say, so Host Committee is a consumer-facing company, but more than anything, it was designed, or we built it to solve a problem for the nightlife industry. So if you look at venues, right, especially clubs, right, and nightclubs, not so much the big concert clubs. These are venues, right, that result from like very large real estate investments, and they're really only occupied from like 11 p.m. or 12 at midnight till 4 a.m. like 4 or 5 days a week, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time they're just sitting there. Right, so an owner will spend several $million renovating the space, and then they'll operate for that short period of time, and then they have an average lifespan of like a year and a half before they shut down and reopen because they lose their cool. So the main problem was, what do we do with all this dead time? And so we said, and at the same time, they don't want to open up their venues to the world because they still want to maintain some sort of veneer of exclusivity because that's the currency that these clubs operate on.
Right.
So we said, we've got to find a way to help these clubs fill themselves during their non-peak hours or their pre-peak hours, right, to help them make revenue and monetize their off hours, but also to solve their ghost town problem at the beginning of the night, right, because you show up at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock a.m., you're the first person there, like it's dead and it's empty, right, so it's always a challenge for them. So we said, if we help kind of a younger demographic basically tap into social media, tap into the power of their social networks to get groups of friends together to fill up these venues that they might not even get into during their, pre-midnight hours where it's still a great time to go out. And the venues can dub them as sort of private parties. It'll be a win for everyone, right? These young people can throw parties with their friends, for their friends. We got the venues to contribute, open bars, or free drinks to get people there, but we did it with scale, right? Yeah. We built an invitation and ticketing platform that was connected to social media, so people could see who was going to these events, how they're connected to them. So it's a huge win across. So it was great for venues and it was great for fans or for consumers. But we did start off saying, let's solve the venues problem here because that's where the opportunity was.
Yeah, and aside from our friend Michael Dorff, who's done a fabulous job with the city winery concept.
Sure.
I would think that this is something that almost all of the kinds of clubs you're addressing need and would embrace.
Absolutely. And there was then once you build this kind of platform, then other people benefit from it as well. So then we started sort of becoming a platform for DJs, right? So up and coming DJs could come DJ at these parties, right? And so we started working with some talent agencies representing DJs to just give them we paid them obviously, but it was all about opportunity and exposure to a broad demographic once we started assembling them. So to your point, everyone needed it, and then the bigger the thing gets, the more you find stakeholders to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. And what are some examples of the range of rewards that you've provided?
Sure. So part of what we built was an incentive system for people who brought more friends, right? To create that sort of power of I wouldn't call it virality, but you needed incentives to get people to bring more people down. So what we tried to focus on were rewards that did not cost the venues much money, but had high perceived value, right? And in the context of a club, what would that be? That would be like a table, right? Like having your own table at the club is viewed as a great thing. Bottle service, right, where venues pay very little money for the actual alcohol, but bottle service is extremely expensive. So stuff like that didn't, perks like that didn't cost the venue anything, actually, drove a lot of positive behavior.
Terrific. Well, jumping even further into the Wayback Machine for just a moment, you started out on the corporate side and played a key role at the labels and the marketing of some of the biggest names in the industry, including Avril and Usher and Pink and Outkast, to name just a few. and I wondered if you could share a little bit, Zeeshan, about what you most loved about the work in that context.
Sure. That time of my life working at Arista Records and RCA Records, right, doing marketing and digital marketing, it was one of the most enjoyable times of my professional career. Like you said, I got to work with some of the biggest names in the industry, working on some of the biggest albums of all time, right, or our time, like Usher's Confessions and Outkast's Speaker Box Love Below. So it was amazing to be such a part of history, right? To actually take these incredible albums, right? These works of art, and bring them to the masses, to millions and millions of people. That was just incredible. I love that. The other thing to me that I loved most about that time, frankly, was at Arista I worked under L.A. Reid, and at RCA I worked under Clive Davis, and then I was part of the BMG Music Group, and I got to work with Barry Weiss a little bit. I got to see some of the greatest hit makers of history up close, right, in action, right, creating hits with their artists, managing their teams. It was just a rush, right? Like every day or every week, when I was at RCA and we were in Clive Davis's weekly meeting where he would sit with the whole staff, go over all our releases, I just regularly pinch myself, right? Think about everything he had done, everything he had accomplished, and the fact that I was a part of the team. So it's pretty
cool. I felt the same way when I was an A&R at EMI. It's just kind of a rush to be able to have that, experience that slice of the wheel and then keep moving. It's just got its own joys about being in the middle of all of that. And, the impact of artists working with brands has been a growing trend, and I wonder if you could share maybe an example of a project you worked on that was very successful in integrating a top brand with one of those artists.
Yeah, so actually, absolutely. So when Sarah McLachlan's album called Afterglow came out, it was a bit of a return, right? Or like I wouldn't call it a comeback album, but she'd gotten married, she'd had a kid, and she released Afterglow. This was like 2003. Is when the single came out. It was after, I'd say it was like 5 years after her last album, right? And so we wanted to make a big return, and or sort of build a big return in the market. She had a big fan base waiting, and so we were like, and at Arista, right? So I was in charge of digital marketing and new media as well as partnership marketing. So we were like, okay, who's a great brand to associate Sarah with? And I said, well, how about Starbucks? And so, for a while, Starbucks eventually got into working with artists sort of in a big way, but this was pretty much their first. We did a partnership with Starbucks. The
prior to the Hear Music acquisition and all of that,
Yeah, exactly. It was called, like Artist Choice. There was Starbucks, what they did was they featured Sarah in her stores. They created a compilation album, which was like a playlist that she liked. They did a lot of media. They bought a bunch of advertising. It was all about Sarah, and they played her song a lot in their store. It was a huge, huge deal. And then they turned that into a franchise, which they replicated again and again.
And you had the luxury of working with a person I admire so much, Terry McBride, in probably co-architecting such a campaign, because he was meticulous about that kind of thing.
Yeah, I work with Terry. That at Arista, a lot of our biggest artists. So Avril Lavigne was managed by Terry McBride. Sarah McLachlan was. Yeah, and then also Dido was managed by Network, his company as well. So I was working on a lot of Terry's acts, and he was a great, great, great partner. And I have all the respect in the world for him. He was phenomenal.
Indeed. Now, then you decided to make a big change, and I wonder what motivated the decision when you jumped out of the label side, and went into more of the tech arena.
So, it was as time went on in BMG. And Sony. By that time, it had become Sony BMG.
Yep.
as my career progressed, I started working more on the technology side and more on the business side. So, the time we were talking about at Arista and RCA, I was working with artists doing marketing. And then I was running digital businesses, right, and working on digital products, which was cool. It was great. But, one day I realized, I had come so far away from directly working with the artists. I'm working on technology, but record labels weren't building the technology. They were just applying the technology. I thought the technology was exciting and music technology had a lot of potential, but I wasn't where all the action was, right? The action was in the creation and the innovation.
That's right.
So I took I took a step back and said, I got, it's an exciting time. The New York tech scene was just starting to it was all about Silicon Valley, but it was starting to emerge. And got put in touch with a couple of entrepreneurs with a great idea, and I said, fine, let's do it.
Yeah. And, this is, getting a beep here. I really resonate with that transition because, of course, I had done that in my career in the late 80s when I left EMI to launch the music focus at Apple,
Yeah, exactly.
And I could see the writing on the wall in terms of tech being the tip of the spear and where things were headed. And very early, of course, but it was clear to me. And so I really applaud you for having, had a similar vision and jumping into that, because it's made you that much more well-rounded. And
it was a great experience. So I spent about 6 years in the tech world before coming back to Ticketmaster, and it was it was a great learning experience.
You went out and got that many more chops under your belt, that much more breadth, and then you were able to bring all that back to bear to add even more value to your current role. And so,
hopefully.
That speaks to you being in charge of your own career and following your own definition of success to pursue the things that called to you as you, took risks and went from side to side and created this career path. So I wonder how you would define success for yourself personally, Zeeshan, with some of that in mind.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, my definition of success over time has changed, right?
Yeah.
For me at this point, it's not any one thing, right? It's multifaceted. I think for me, it's sort of there's multiple things that I care about, right? In this day and age, we live complex lives, and success to me is like, it's almost like an index of a weighted average of how well I'm doing on all these things, right? So I care about my professional career, right? Have I built or helped build or grown organizations and achieved whatever goals are set out, right? Whether those are performance metrics or monetary, right? Am I doing well professionally? Have I built a team that's phenomenal? Have I made the people on my team better? That's important to me, right? In my musical life, right, with the Commuters, have I written songs that I love, that I'm happy with? Have I recorded them? Have I made other people happy with? Have I connected them? Have I grown my audience, right? In my personal life, am I providing for my family? Am I raising now I have a daughter, am I raising her well? Have I spent enough time with my family and friends? For me, like, success is, it's all of those things.
I love it.
And
I love it because you're being very holistic in your approach. So many people would centered on the career spoke, and you really cover the whole gamut.
Yeah, and it's about, you can never, I can never be 100% on all of those, right? Because there just aren't enough hours in the day. But am I doing as good a job as possible as many of those as possible? That for me is success, right? It's
the fact that you're even thinking about it like that speaks volumes. That you're thinking holistically and not just being one dimensional. And that, really, it's a whole life that we're talking about here. I agree with you. I think success covers the gamut. It's not just about your work. I think we fall into a trap in our society of really defining ourselves and our success by our work and how many zeros are in the bank account and, where we think we ought to be at this point in our lives and our careers. It's much more than that.
Yeah, success for me, if I were to boil it down to one metric, it's when I'm at the end of my life, whenever that is, if I look back, will I feel you know what, I'm happy with what I did?
Well, you've just segued into my final question, interestingly enough, and you didn't even know you were doing it. I got to tell you, Zeeshan, as we wrap up, the most important question I like to end these discussions, these chats with, is legacy. It's when you look down the road at what you're creating over time, is there one project or collaboration that you've not yet started but is out there as part of your bucket list that you dream about creating as part of your own legacy?
Wow. For me, it's like, you know what? I have I don't have a series of projects. I have like a continuous project. It's almost like two continuous projects, right? One continuous project is the day job of using and harnessing technology to help artists connect with their fans, right? Mm-hmm. That's been like the story of my career. And for me, I don't know if there's one big project that I have yet to tackle, but there's, I'm not done, right?
Not by
on that path.
No.
I still have a lot to do, and whether I was doing it at Arista, right, where we were distributing music, or whether I was doing it at sort of Naber, which was a startup I was at, where we were kind of getting video exposure, or now at Ticketmaster, it is one continuous big thing that we haven't reached the ultimate yet, so I'm still at it. And then, the other big project for me is the commuters, and I still think, the best music we are capable of is yet to come. So we're just going to keep at it, right, and keep putting out music and keep touring and keep connecting with our fans until we get as far as we can.
And in all of those things, remembering to enjoy yourself and having fun.
Absolutely.
It's just not worth it if you're not doing that,
Totally agree. And the great thing, and this is, I'm sure, true for you too, is just that one of the great things where we're so blessed to have careers in the music industry is that so much of what we do inherently is just fun. Like, that's always there in the backdrop.
Yeah, and we get to actually get paid for doing the work that we love, aren't we, love?
Exactly. That's always
well,
nice.
Zeeshan, I just think it's been wonderful to have you. I know we started talking about doing this together almost a year ago, and
I know
how crazy your schedule is. So once again, I want to thank you for carving out the time to do this tonight. We're really, really glad to have you. And I wish you much continued success in all of these different endeavors, and I look forward to the chance to sit down with you together in person as soon as we have the next opportunity.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. This was a lot of fun.
Terrific. And I also want to thank my show producers, Mary Agnes Antonopoulos and Jessica Masters, for the wonderful work they do, and our listening audience. Thank you again for joining us as you do each week. We'll hear you all again next week on the next edition of All Access Radio. Good night, everybody.